This is The Chris Heasley Show, coming to you from Radio DeBang, the North America's premier broadcasting network.
Hello, this is Chris Heasley with The Chris Heasley Radio Show, and in Fort Bend County right now, there is an idea, a mission to turn our sleepy bedroom town into a booming metropolis. The idea is in the model of Dallas and Fort Worth, where Fort Worth was created as a metropolitan area to sort of balance out Dallas, that Houston should be Houston-Fort Bend, and we would have one more booming metropolitan area in our sleepy bedroom community. And of course, this idea is being driven by members of the county commissioner's court and other members of parts of the county government. And with that idea comes the idea of big government and big projects and largesse. And we have a problem in Fort Bend County today, which is we are sinking in a hole of debt. We're sinking in a hole of debt, and we have a county commissioner's court that largely does not want to address it. They're okay with passing these hikes in our budget, these additional debt increments, but I don't believe they have any intention of actually paying off that debt or being here when the notes come due. But that will definitely be on the backs of the citizens, and nobody's talking about this. Of course, the county commissioner's court, the county business bureau or whatever it's called, is going around doing its tour talking about this booming metropolitan area that they want to create. But we want to bring a counter position here on this show. The premise of this show since the beginning is to keep Fort Bend County small, the government small. The idea was to keep the budgets limited. The idea was to keep the debt as almost non-existent as possible, and to stop our county from turning into the nightmare that is Harris County, the nightmare that is Houston. Right now, the financial state of Houston is a catastrophe, and there are a lot of people in Fort Bend County that want to drive our county down that same road. And so we're bringing some very intelligent men on this show over the next 2 weeks to talk about this issue that nobody else is talking about. So if you want the fluff, there are other shows out there for you. But if you want the content, we're going to give it to you here. And on today's show, we have two incredible guests. I can't wait for this show. It's going to be great. We have in our studio today, we have Bill Rickert, Fort Bend County Treasurer.
Great to be here again, Chris. Appreciate the invite.
Appreciate you, Bill. Bill probably knows more about the county than anyone. And we have a candidate, Adam Schoof, school board, former school board, or you're still on the school board?
No, I'm currently on the school board.
Currently
Chris.
on the school
Yes.
board. And if I might give just a bit of an introduction, Adam is an unpopular guy on the school board because he always wants to talk about dollars and cents. And so when you want to talk about dollars and cents, when you want to talk about balanced budgets, when you want to ask those extra questions, your image gets maligned. And they don't like it. They want to spend. They don't like it when he does that. But Adam is on the Fort Bend the school board, and he is now running a candidacy for county commissioner court.
Correct. Yes, in precinct 4.
And you want to take those, and I would like to say, take those same ideas to the county commissioner's court.
Same ideas, same philosophy, same mission to the commissioner's court.
Well, great. We got a lot to talk about. Let's talk about the schools first. So,
hey, first off, Chris, happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. It's tomorrow, but I do appreciate it. Thank you very much. Let's start off with the schools. So tell us the state of the Fort Bend Independent School District today.
Well, currently we're still recovering from the $1.2 billion bond situation and the shortfall within those bonds. Well, in my first year, my first term, I was able to save $40 million of that money just by asking questions about construction materials, construction costs, and really pushing the administration and the contractors, borderline nickel and diming them on materials, and was able to save a ton of money. And that's what I'm going to continue to do.
And there was a $1.2 billion bond that was passed.
Correct.
With the county vote.
With the voters that live within the boundaries of the school district.
And what year was that passed?
2023.
What's the financial solvency of the school board at this point in time, of the school district at this point in time?
Well, I'm not a fan of it because at every turn, it's how do we milk more money out of the taxpayer, and that's against my philosophy. I don't believe that it takes as much money as we're spending to educate children.
So let's talk about some of the things that happened while you were on the court. Certain issues where, while you were on the court, how many years were you on the court?
About 2 years I've been on the school board.
On the school board, I mean to say.
Yeah.
2 years.
Yes, sir.
And over the course of those 2 years, has the school board raised taxes on the citizens?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they have. I've actively voted against it. There are news articles where I am the only person voting against tax increases. But, to give an example, in the 89th legislative session that just happened last year, the state decided to increase this homestead exemption for school tax from $100,000 to $140,000. And in turn, most large-size school districts in the state of Texas reached into disaster pennies in order to make that tax decrease that was state required be a complete wash to the average taxpayer. And most people didn't even know it happened.
Okay, so in other words, the state voted essentially to lower your taxes.
Correct.
And what they did at the local level, the school boards, is they all voted to eat those savings up in their own tax.
Correct. And through avenues that did not require going to the voter for a tax increase.
Okay. Roughly speaking, did they eat up the entire tax decrease that the state gave us?
Yes.
The school board,
the schools.
Okay,
yes.
and they passed this without going to the voters.
Correct.
How is that possible?
So there in Texas, there are these things called disaster pennies, which are temporary property tax increases after declared disasters, such as Hurricane Beryl, and they're there to fund immediate repairs and without voter approval, and also things such as security or public safety needs. So what most large-sized school districts did who were affected by a disaster such as Hurricane Beryl is the funds that could be used from disaster pennies, they just took those avenues, those particular departments within the districts, and they allocated the funds that would have been spent on those departments anyway back into the general fund to increase the general fund, and the revenue within the general fund, and then fund those departments by disaster pennies for however amount of time allotted under the law allows them.
So they basically tax the people. They used the scenario. They said, hey, this is an emergency situation, so we're going to have an emergency tax hike on the people.
Correct.
That just happened to coincide with the state coming through with the tax decrease.
Correct.
State comes through with this decrease. The school board sees an opportunity. They're opportunists, and they use this. They say, hey, okay, now we have an emergency. The emergency was that people got their taxes lowered.
Correct.
And they jack it up with this emergency tax increase. And those funds that come from that tax increase are directed specifically to security and emergency services, which already had funding. So then they just remove the funding that was already there and take it to other areas.
Exactly. Correct.
That's not good.
No, it's not. And I don't believe that we would have, I don't believe that any school district that did this would have reached into those disaster pennies had there not been the increase in the homestead exemption.
At the state level, did the state legislature do something because this was happening at school boards all across the state? And did they pass a law that would not allow this in the future or something of that sort?
Well, so unfortunately, disaster pennies are something that are a necessity. Okay, so for example, when we had Hurricane Harvey,
right.
That's massive infrastructure that needs to be repaired, and that's what that's intended for. And like there was, I believe it was House Bill 30 was to really restrict the use of disaster pennies. However, these large size school districts, the education system is very, very good at finding loopholes within the law in order to essentially do what they want.
Okay, well, is there anything else you want to say on the school board? Because we'll move over to the county.
Well, I'm gonna, make a
Bill,
few comments here on.
No, I
Yes.
apologize. I was saving you for the county. I
yeah.
didn't know you wanted to chime in
Yeah,
on the school
yeah.
board issues.
No,
Please, I've been meaning to get to you.
So I was just say first in general, taxing entities, the answer is always, if we only had more money. And that applies significantly with the school districts. We can solve all our problems if we can have more money. The county, we have to have more money. But, our bigger problems are our spending problems, right? And what we spend money on and making those decisions. And I'll go back to school board. I uniquely have a unique experience here because my wife was on the Fort Bend ISD school board in the early 2000s. And, you see this human nature thing of, growing my organization, making it bigger, making it, deal with more issues and take on more responsibilities, builds a air of importance, right? And I think it's a human nature thing that even in business, right, if you're not in check, a department head will always need more employees. They always need more, but there's, the checks and balances of, revenue and what you're contributing and KPIs and those type things that keep that in balance, where in government, it's, I've seen, in the county where we just, politics becomes justification, right? It's not making a business case for something. If you going back to the school district, I remember one of the battles my wife fought, they had their own tax collection department that was in measurable numbers, was costing $500,000 a year. And when you go into the government, you really don't measure everything. Like, for example, when I first came in as county treasurer, I'm looking at my department budget and I'm like, so where's the cost for office space? Where's the cost for this? It's not there. It's just the actual cost, right? Upfront costs. Nothing is allocated out. So, department heads don't even know what they really cost. But if you look at that was costing, $500,000 a year, and she pushed to have it outsourced to the county tax collector. And that first year, it went from $500,000 to $150,000, right? Because there's somebody else that already does this. Why are we reinventing the wheel, and why are we building a whole department for it? Same thing applies for county government. What are we doing that we shouldn't be doing, right? We all the time think everything is a necessity, and I look at some of my fellow county treasurers throughout the state when it came to COVID and the American Recovery Act. They were looking at, okay, how can we spend this money to reduce taxpayer costs in the future, right? We were looking at, okay, let's hire more epidemiologists. Let's do this. Let's fund this pet project here and there. Let's build monuments. There's all these things that are a waste of money and are long-term commitments. And that's the tendency of government, is to, always just look for what more we could be doing, right? I've heard certain individuals say, basically saying the county should be doing everything for everybody. It's not. Our number one thing is the safety of our residents, right? And that's law enforcement, safe roads and bridges, drainage, all those key core things that we need to be focusing on as a county, and the same thing for a school district, the core thing, educating children. When you look at the ratio of what is spent directly in a classroom versus the total budget, it's scary on some school districts.
And it's unfortunate that every single teacher that you'll ever meet will tell you that they're spending their own money on their classroom.
Yeah, and unfortunately, in whether it's a business or government, whatever people resources you have that are the highest number is typically the lowest paid, right? Right. We look at, in county government, all the people we have on the front line working in the county clerk's office or the tax collector's office, there's many of them. So it's a pay issue. Look at the sheriff's office, there's lots of them. So there's always going to be a pay issue because it's what affects the total cost.
Well, and I'm a military man, so looking at education, the way that I look at the military and the way that the military operates is in the Army, there's the infantry, and then everybody else in the Army, all the other jobs in the Army are there to support the infantry with no other purpose. If that job is not supporting the infantry, then there's no need for that job, and the military cuts that.
Mm-hmm. If you look at, if you go back, the government with here in Fort Bend County, you take somebody like the city of Sugar Land, right? That's pretty much built out, right? They have to start sharpening their pencil to make things work because there's not that new incremental tax base coming online. And, for those who are not familiar, taxing entities like the county and the cities have a 3.5% cap on increase in tax revenue on existing tax base. The school district, it's 2.5%. The way that works is if you've got a lot of new growth, like Fort Bend County does, well, we can always lower the tax rate, but we still collect a whole lot more money and spend a whole lot more money and look for ways to spend it versus, if you look at the whole budget process, it's, you get the numbers from the CAD for the evaluation, and you basically figure out how much money you have to spend, and then you go allocate it, right? It's basically what happens. And that's not the way to do it. In business, zero-based budgeting, where each department has to re-justify its existence every year and its resources. That's the way we should be looking at government.
Okay. Let me get to my featured product here. I want to cover all this stuff. This is getting really good. The featured product is the X39 patch. The X39 patch. I have it on my arm right now. This X39 patch is an amazing medical technology. It is the fastest growing direct sales company in the world, 2 years in a row. What this technology does is it's photolight therapy that triggers a peptide that awakens your stem cells and turns back the age of your heart. It is not anti-aging. It doesn't slow aging. It reverses the age of your heart. With 6 months of use, this patch will reverse the age of your heart by up to 8 years, almost a decade. And the outward benefits are incredible, all different for all different for all people, but one of which that is across the board is that you look younger. You look younger with the X39 patch. It's the X39 patch. It's photolight therapy that stimulates your stem cells, turns back the age of your heart, reverses the age of your heart and your other internal organs, and then it extrapolates itself outward from there in a number of different ways it benefits life. It's incredible, one of which is that it makes you look younger. It's the X39 patch. To get a link to learn more about this, text the word Patriot to 330-606-2304. Oh, man. So, one of the things I think about is Sandy Springs, Georgia. And Sandy Springs was a nice bedroom community that got consumed by eminent domain by greater Atlanta, Fulton County, or I should say Atlanta, the city of Atlanta. And then, of course, when that happened, this, Atlanta, the welfare queen that it is, gutted Sandy Springs' savings, turned it into a hole. So those people fought back, went to the Supreme Court, and won and got their city back. They are no longer part of Atlanta. And when they did, this experience was what they needed because they have a strict adherence to small government. If it is not a necessary part of government, it does not exist in Sandy Springs, Georgia. But here in Fort Bend, these guys consider themselves visionaries, these commissioners on the court. And what they want to do, again, is they want to build out this grand county that rivals the city, this grand county that rivals the city of Houston. And they want to build it out with epicenters and baseball stadiums and football stadiums and arenas and concert halls and all of this stuff that weighs down the government, takes it away from its true purpose, makes it complicated for the average citizen, props up the commissioners that are doling out this cash so they can never be taken out. And it's the kiss of death for the county. And again, right now, the county business bureau or whatever it's called is going around selling this idea.
Economic development.
They're selling this idea. Now, there's that type of growth, which I don't agree with. And then there's other growth, which is right now in Rosenberg, there is a massive industrial park that's going in, and the county's doing a great job of clearing all the lanes, making that industrial park happen. Of course, we want to see that stuff. There's an idea, I believe, to liberate a rail line in Fort Bend County that would allow transportation to just really boom in our county, things like that. So with that being said, I want to ask Adam. Let's start with Adam. I mean, Adam, you're going to go into the county commissioner's court with the same position, and they are going to come at you hard. I mean, tell me what your vision is for the
Chris,
county and how you plan on tackling this.
One of the things that everybody fails to think about is where Fort Bend County is actually located. Okay, right down the road in Freeport in Brazoria County, there is the only deep water port in the entire state of Texas. Okay, the deep water port of Freeport. All right, been right through there on the intercoastal on my boat many a times, and there are these massive ships that come into Freeport every single day and drop off containers and oil, and they put it onto tractor trailers. And these tractor trailers, they run north to Dallas, north to Interstate 59, 69, to Dallas, to San Antonio, Austin, and they drive right through Fort Bend County. And we see anywhere from 15 to 17,000 tractor trailers a day that come through Fort Bend County, leaving the port of Freeport to go to major cities in the state of Texas and all throughout the South. And aside from the fact that we should be thinking, how can we capitalize on this, being that we are a feeder route in the world of logistics and shipping, aside from that, we need to be thinking about the infrastructure issues of, okay, what is 17,000 tractor trailers a day do to our roadways? Because roadways, the more truck travel, the more maintenance roadways take, and not to mention the traffic issues that come with that. So ideas such as the rail line is outstanding. And
explain what the rail line idea is.
Well, it's not my idea, but
I think it's Andy Meyer's idea. I don't know if it is.
Yeah,
it's
well,
Andy's
he was a key part of it.
And
he's a proponent of it.
Andy Myers is a very smart man. Especially, he was thinking about the Deepwater Port years ago when he came up with 36A as a bypass in order to reduce traffic flow through the county. But essentially, it makes total sense. Going where 36 is, where they're widening State Highway 36 right now, going through Needville. I mean that's an old railroad bed that went dang near to Freeport, and was I want to say that rail line was taken up in the early 70s, Bill?
Probably, yeah, about that time.
Probably about that time, but there wasn't the shipping traffic to justify those rail lines existing back then, but now there are.
So wait, the rail line was taken up. Are they going to lay it down again? I don't know.
It wouldn't be the same.
It wouldn't be the same route.
It wouldn't be the same route. So the key thing is, if we go back in history, I'm a big history buff, right? And if you look at Fort Bend, we were, part of the original settlement of Texas, the original 300. But after that, right, the biggest part of Fort Bend's history is the railroads, right? And the railroads are still to this day a big part, with the crossroads we have there we have 3 railroads interconnecting there in Rosenberg. And the actual line that goes from Rosenberg down to Galveston was built by Henry Rosenberg to bypass Houston because of all the issues of politics and that, and getting freight through Houston. So
the 36A of the 1800s.
Yeah. So we have a rich history in transportation and enabling us, and we have out in Kennelton there, it's the intermodal, where you basically do interchange of the big containers that are on trains versus on trucks. And then if you take a look now at the other big asset that's not in Fort Bend County but affects us is the Port Freeport. Port Freeport is what it's called, and it is it's a deep water port, and it's the shortest distance to the Gulf of Mexico. Right, to go to Houston, you got to navigate all the way up. It's a very significant. Even New Orleans, where I'm from, you got to go all the way up the Mississippi River to get to the actual port. It's very convenient for shipping. Their growth plans are tremendous, right? And we need to find, some kind of way to ensure that, one, we don't become the world's largest truck stop, right, in Fort Bend County, that we enable the movement of that shipping traffic, and we take advantage of it with the land we have adjacent to that area, which you were talking about, the Union Pacific Industrial Park and other areas out there, and we need to be able to shift to where we're building a light industrial tax base and technology. But one of the biggest challenges with that is electricity, right? I mean, if you look at, the technicalities of getting electricity, significant amount of power to new locations, CenterPoint, as a regulated business, they cannot go build infrastructure and start charging us for it, right, as homeowners, right, as they're building it in advance, right? They have to have a customer to build that infrastructure. So there's no way, and all these industrial firms are looking for ready-to-build sites, right, that are ready to move in, have all the bits and pieces in place. So there needs to be a mechanism to be able to, build out these parks. And that's one of the things Andy Myers was working on with the legislature this last time, was to create something sort of like a municipal utility district that's an industrial district that allows, to sell some bonds, to build out that infrastructure, and then bring in that light industrial to pay off, those bonds, right? So they would be actually, paying the taxes that were borrowed. So that's the key. If we keep growing as a bedroom community alone, we are going to not be able to afford to live in our homes with the tax base, right? And, when they talk about, bringing Houston to Fort Bend, well, that's not what we want, right? But we do want live and work capabilities, right? For people to be able to live in Fort Bend County and work in Fort Bend County. And that's all this works together, right? By bringing in these industries and technology, big data centers, and those type things that are a struggle to get now because we don't have, build-ready sites.
Why is and I agree with you, but just why is the tax burden going to be too big if it just stays a bedroom community? Because
if you look at the ratio of successful counties and communities, right, as far as, and I'm trying to pull these numbers from my head right now, but I think we're like, we're in the 80% is paid by homeowners versus industry, right, business. So now, to be successful, I think like a 60-40 mix is where you really want to be at, is to keep the tax burden down, right? And that's, the goal is we have to drive towards that, where we can actually, be able to afford to live in homes here, where there is these, revenue generating, employing, businesses that are paying the fair share.
Shift the residential tax, the burden from residential
right
to industrial.
Yeah. I mean, we have one of the highest tax burdens on our residents in the state.
Top 20 in the nation.
Yeah.
Top 20 highest property tax county in the nation.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about some of the other projects. Well, let's talk, what is the financial solvency? What's the state of finances for Fort Bend County right now?
I mean, it's good. It's going to be good because, we have new neighborhoods going in and collecting more taxes from individuals, right? At some point, we're going to be built out, and we're going to have a status quo of how much tax we can collect from these homes, and that's when it really starts to hurt us. The problem is not bringing in tax revenue. It's how we're spending it, right? And being able to reduce that burden and building for the future so that the burden is not overwhelming.
So let's talk about the epicenter.
Okay.
As I understand it, they have to raise $160 million from the taxpayers. Is that right?
I don't have the number in my head, but it's significant number. I mean, all this stuff comes at a risk when you're doing it. They're doing it via public-private partnership, and while it may reduce costs, the main thing it does is it circumvents the funding of it from going to the voters, right? And there may be some things that make sense. If you look at, we're doing several projects with, the new IT center, the sheriff's training center, right? All those things should be justified, right? By those that are involved, and be able to sell it to the taxpayers. We basically circumvent that process. The epicenter is a whole different category, in a new hotel and all this stuff that they want to build out there. That should be private sector projects totally, right? And if the time isn't right for it, then they're not going to build it. If we intervene, then we may be causing something to happen that will be a failure, right? How many times does government get it right? It's not very often, right?
Well, what did Reagan say about government? The scariest thing you can hear is, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's, the key. To me, there's two different categories going on. There's things that we probably should be doing in the county that we're funding through a mechanism that circumvents the voters. And we're doing things that we probably absolutely shouldn't be doing as a county.
Okay, let's talk about the first one then. What mechanism are they, what are they funding, and what mechanism are they using that circumvents the voters?
It's where you bring in private money to fund the project.
Debt.
Right. It's obligations, right? Because
and so
you're
the commissioner's
obligated.
court, the commissioner's court is voting on this without voter approval of the populace.
Correct. And it was a mechanism created by the state, right?
What's it called?
Public-private partnership.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a mechanism created to enable government entities to spark new growth and those type of things. But, we've adopted it as a general purpose tool, right, is the problem. And I, look at the epicenter and where the hotel and all this stuff. I have no problem with the county or any government, a city or whatever, saying, hey, we want to develop in a certain way and we need these types of things, so let's go out and make sure that land's available and go buy the land, preserve it, and wait for the right time to sell it to the right developer.
Right. And step out of it.
And step out of it.
Yeah.
Right. And not have any obligations.
Right.
Right. When you have those ongoing obligations, that's the problem.
And so, correct me if I'm wrong, but the circumstances like you go to a certain developer and, hey, if you develop on this land, you don't pay taxes for X amount of years on it.
Well, that's that's a TERS type situation, which is how the the Smart Financial Centers in the TERS, the Sugarland Town Center was done with the TERS, and the mechanism is there. Well, somebody thinks this is a good idea to build, but maybe we can get them to build it bigger, more grander, sooner, and increase our tax base, down the road. Then it's a good thing, right? Quite often, though, those things, and I hate to say it this way, are triggered, by who owns the land and who owns the land around it, and who, and who's going to benefit from it. But that's a whole different story. But in the case of the town center, it was a great thing. And unfortunately, with the town center, when that was voted on by the different entities, the Fort Bend ISD School Board voted against it, the TERS. So they opted not to defer their taxes, to gain more, and the project shrunk, right, in size, right? There was supposed to be a big grant. What's the big 3D IMAX, IMAX. There was supposed to be all these other things that were supposed to be there that people pulled out because Fort Bend ISD didn't join in on the TERS.
But that Sugarland Town Square is not a government-owned entity.
Right, it's not a government-owned.
It was just tax deferred.
Tax deferred,
which is a lot, which maybe makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense to do it for the right reason.
It's a long-term strategy.
Yeah, I mean, I just like the idea that the county would own and operate an IMAX is just foreign to me.
Yeah, or anything like
right.
Any type of.
I mean, I don't know how they got
venue.
I mean, it's like all started with football stadiums and baseball stadiums across America.
Yeah. And
every single one of us is an albatross on the government, on the taxpayer's back.
Yeah.
That nobody wants. And they have to go out farther and farther into the countryside to tax more and more people to pay for these things.
Yeah. and not to say there shouldn't be, some contribution, because there is a return for the city, for building a football stadium, but they've gone overboard, right? The ones that are benefit from it is the NFL, right? And you can see it,
Well, yeah. And these exorbitant salaries
Yeah,
that these
yeah,
football
yeah.
players get while grandma is paying they're having a hard time paying her property taxes to fund this
Yeah.
this enterprise.
Yeah, and if you notice, in different cities, example from where I'm from, New Orleans, they did a big program, built the Louisiana Superdome, but they keep remodeling it because the economics there don't allow them to go off and just tear it down like other people do and build a new one, because they're milking the taxpayers, because there's not that tax base to support it.
So right now, is the Epicenter the only project of that type that we're discussing right now?
That and the adjacent hotel they're doing.
But they've gotten a number of these projects off. The baseball stadium, is that
Well, that's the city.
okay?
That's Sugar Land.
Okay. But okay, do they have any other projects like this? What about the
Well, that's the ones that are being funded that same way are the training center, the law enforcement training center, the IT, the new IT building, and one other. I'm drawing a blank right now, but yeah. And the other thing is, mechanism we use to circumvent the voters is, certificates of obligation, right? So you can issue certificates of obligation that basically, put that ahead of other debt, right? You're basically carving out, percent of your tax money to guarantee that payback. So it's not a debt risk like a bond, right? That's being paid out of the general fund. That doesn't go to the voters. So, we're up, if you look at now certificates of, we're up to 314 million in 314 million in certificates of obligation. That's a lot of money.
and not voter approved?
Not voter approved. Plus the process of, rolling existing expenditures into leases and those type of things, those go on every day, It's considered standard operation,
It is a complex enterprise they've created.
Yeah.
And it's to unwind it and to understand it all.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here listening and still learning and not knowing what questions to ask
And
next.
not to say all these things are bad, right? Because, used appropriately and not as a consistent tool, they're probably okay, right? And that's probably why they exist, right? It's the perpetual use that is the problem.
So, Adam, what is your vision for the county should you get elected to the Commissioner's Court? What would be the driving issues, your mission, your goals, everything of that sort?
I'd like to. I would start by exploring the options in debt refinancing. We've been successful on the school board with having avenues to lower the burden on the homeowner by refinancing bonds and debt. Because interest rates dropping, the same concept when it comes to at least our bonds.
Would the Commissioner's Court be opposed to that? I think they'd all be in support of that.
I'm sure everybody would. I hope everybody would
right.
be.
And to be honest, that is something that's looked at all the time with the auditor. I mean, he's measuring all these things, but he's, of course, what we're doing and why we're doing it is all, instructed by Commissioner's Court, right? So,
Right.
But as far as looking at what's the best tools and how to move forward with what has been decided, we have a great county auditor.
Who is it?
Ed Sturdivant.
And that'd be wonderful. And I would be a vote to I mean, any avenue to lower that burden on the taxpayer. That's where I'm going to vote. I'd like to increase industrial growth within the county. Love the idea of the rail lines. Love the idea of shifting tractor trailer traffic from the roadway onto rail. That way we're not sitting in traffic as much. Maybe every once in a while, a pesky mile long train at a railroad crossing, but just and flood control. Flood control is another issue that we're working with the engineers to, as we build roads, build them in ways that are actually going to drain and drain away from people's properties.
Yeah, I mean, projects need to be, assigned to and given out to different firms more based on, what they can actually do and do good for us. And there needs to be an overall master plan, which we do have for drainage, and we do have, we have good people working on that stuff. But, the old saying, we need more money. If you look at, what we spend on drainage versus, all these other things that we're doing, I mean, it's scary. You would think we would be focusing more on drainage, right?
Well, and Bill, a lot of times more money just turns into more legacy projects. Yeah. And legacy projects, having a road that hasn't been completed in 7, 8, 10 years, that's a disservice to anybody and everybody having to drive that road every day.
Yeah. Well, you look at Richmond Parkway there and how long that,
right,
so
Ransom Road
that connects, the two parts of the county, the Justice Center with the old courthouse and the Travis building. I mean, that was years and years because of failed efforts by who was hired to actually do the job,
Massively failed efforts in putting set guidelines in these contracts to where here's your deadline for the contract. If you go over this deadline, you make less money. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you what I have been impressed with is the speed that West Park Toll has been being built, particularly the last 2 stages of it. And I'm just curious why we can't do that with our own county projects.
Well, just think about it, right? Okay. When does the toll road start getting money?
Well, when cars drive through it.
Okay. It's basically a commercial enterprise, right? It has a commercial enterprise factor to it, right?
Well, but I feel that the citizens of Fort Bend County deserve the same service that they're getting from toll roads, in their construction from toll roads from us as the county, considering we pay a lot to live in this county.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, there's no reason we can't have the same type of focus on all the core responsibilities of the county.
Right, especially being we are a destination county in the Houston region. I mean, my mother was looking at moving to Pecan Grove from California in the 90s. So it's well known. It's a desired place to live, and our citizens they have an expectation higher than what the average person who lives here has felt like they've been getting.
Why are the taxes so high in Fort Bend County?
Lack of industrial base and spending on things we shouldn't be spending on.
Like what are we spending on that we shouldn't be spending on?
Getting involved with all these projects like the Epicenter and, it's a smaller degree, things like, monuments and I believe green space. I believe in parks and I believe in, all this type of stuff. But we have to, remain focused on, preserving the availability of that stuff with the intention of hopefully some city annexing it, taking it over, and running it on a regular basis. If we try as a county to provide city-level services, it's a disaster.
You're talking about things like the Epicenter.
The Epicenter, the level of parks and things we're doing, community centers, those things. If a community center is, I believe in nonprofits, right? So I believe in let's use our nonprofits, let's enable them, let's get, if I decide to give, fund a nonprofit, I'm watching to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, right? When government gives money or spends money, there's nobody watching to make sure it's providing the return on the investment. So, leverage those nonprofits, leverage having our cities, our county, when we do measurements against other counties, it's hard to do because, our incorporated area is fairly large, extremely large compared to Montgomery County. Our unincorporated populations are about the same, right, as Montgomery County, but we have these large cities. And, the way it's structured, those people in those cities, and I forget the number, but, city of Sugar Land is paying like 30% of the county tax or something like that, the residents of Sugar Land. That's shrinking as other cities are growing, but it's a, and they get, technically less service, right? The city's maintaining more things. City of Sugar Land has its own EMS.
Their own fire, their own police department,
yeah.
without an emergency services district.
Yeah. So, and other cities are the same way. Some other cities are still using the county's EMS, some aren't. So it's an imbalance. I mean, I learned something not long ago. My daughter lives in Virginia, right? And in Virginia, cities aren't in the counties. When they become a city, they're extracted from the county. They don't pay county taxes. They don't, they're just their own thing and take care of themselves. Here our cities still pay, and that's why we end up doing, and Andy's been doing a great job with the city of Sugar Land with finding projects that make sense to do and assist and partner with the city on to make sure they're getting their fair share of that money they're paying. All right, and that takes a lot to manage all that and keep track of that and make sure we're doing the right things and not just spending the money the wrong way. But we do have a complicated system. Our government, it's growing up in Louisiana and moving here. I moved here in 1992. And back home, not to say Louisiana does things right in any kind of way, but we have parishes instead of counties. But cities can't grow over parish lines, right? So the city of New Orleans is all of Orleans Parish now, and they don't grow over the parish lines. School districts are one per parish, right? So Fort Benton would have one school district. So when we moved here, and then you throw MUDs and emergency services districts and LIDs and all that stuff in there, it gets very confusing.
We have a lot of forms of
lot
government,
of taxing entities,
a ton of taxing entities, and we have the city of Cadiz in 3 counties.
Yeah.
The city of Pearland in 3 counties. The city of Missouri City is in 2 counties.
Yeah.
So here in the city of Houston is what 9 counties.
Yeah, and we moved in new territory, and a levee around the neighborhood, and it's like, don't you build levees along the waterways? You don't build levees around the neighborhoods, to keep the waterway in its thing.
You'd rather do that than stack sandbags.
Yeah, but it's it's because all these independent entities and the thought process here is very local control, but that stops regional thought process, as to how, and we've made improvements on that. We have a lot of regional efforts.
Well, and Bill, a lot of people don't understand a lid board, and that that these levies, a lot of these levies, they require a lot of maintenance, and they actually have a full board of directors managing those levies.
Yeah,
I feel like it's so complicated.
Mm-hmm.
It's so complicated.
Well, it's been overcomplicated. Just for the sake of, I mean, let's think about it. Walking in to get your driver's license, dealing with DMV type situations that where all DPS has made some massive strides, and it is a lot easier to deal with that. But government bureaucracy is a problem because a lot of government employees would just rather shift it off to the next department, shove it off to the next department, to where they don't have to deal with the immediate need of the citizen right in front of them.
Last question. What's the state of debt in Fort Bend County?
Well, we're at $2 billion right now as far as debt. So,
and
and that's not counting what hasn't been issued yet. That's been voted on. It's scary.
Is that the biggest? I think we're the biggest debt per capita in the state, or something.
Well,
like that?
I mean, I look at it from this perspective. Since 2022, our population has grown 13%. Right, our debt has grown 54%, and the county's budget has grown 41%.
How do they justify that?
It's,
They don't. Just most people aren't paying attention.
Yeah.
you can't get voters, if voters paid enough attention to the details like they do their own pocketbook, they would be appalled and they would control it at the ballot box.
Well, I think the other thing is, like, in this show, what we've tried to do is decipher what are necessary, legitimate government projects and what are nonsense ones, what are largesse. And it's almost like we need some sort of a database where we can see all of the different things that they've spent money on that they now run that has become our county government.
Yeah.
Like every gymnasium, every rec center, everything. And the other thing about these things, a lot of times they're spending money and you have to wonder if someone's getting paid off because they pay overpriced for these properties.
Yeah, I mean, if you take, for example, my pet peeves is, over by Pecan Grove there, we bought this building. It was a gym.
For $11 million.
Yeah, and I think that was like $3-4 million more than it was on a,
Right.
tax
Who owned
rolls
it?
for. And what that has done is it's taken that off the tax rolls, right? So that increases all of our taxes, right? Because we all pay for
Yeah,
that,
right.
And at the same time, and like I said, I love nonprofits, and we were giving money to the YMCA to rebuild the YMCA that's very nearby, right? So why are we doing?
Yeah.
Why are we doing both?
And why is the government even involved in that business? We just had a Retro Fitness open up in Fort Bend County, just outside of Meadows Place.
Yeah.
These gyms are, and they're $10 a month.
Yeah. Now I can, if there's a disadvantaged community, right, and the program is to build something where nobody else will build it or open it, and help get kids off the street, okay, then that is a safety issue for the community, right?
So they built in Harris County. They built the Aleaf. It's incredible. The Aleaf Park, and it has a skateboarding ramps and everything. It's packed with the community. The problem with it is, if you give an inch, they take a mile.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they got one legitimate project off the ground, and how many illegitimate projects? And by the way, this $11 million spend that they did on this gymnasium, who owned the gymnasium? Should that purchase be investigated?
Yeah. Well, I mean, anybody can.
Guys, we're going to finish. Go ahead, please.
And I was just saying, one more example, because it's indirect for all of us, is, the Pecan Grove Mud bought, the old Pecan Grove golf course and club there, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, that was a private endeavor, paying taxes, right? Now, people realize, now, the people in the Mud, they're just paying for it. They close to it, they use it. But that building paid school tax, and that building paid Fort Bend County tax that we're all now having to subsidize, right? Because it's off the tax rolls.
Because it's a government building now.
Yeah, yeah.
It's called ass backwards. We'll finish up here. Adam, gentlemen, Bill, please tell us what you want to say on the way out here.
Well, I'm gonna.
You're not running.
I'm not running. I'm blessed, that not to have a primary opponent, but there's 5 guys on the other side vying to take me on in November. But I wanted to go in a different direction. I just want to put a plug for. We're talking about railroads and all that. I've been on the board of the Rosenberg Railroad Museum. I don't even know how long. It might be 14 years now. I was president for many years. And, we have a little gem here in the county that's, got a lot about our history and that key part of, transportation in general and the railroads. And it's a great place to take your kids to and learn. So
Excellent. Very good. Yep. That's incredible. Adam, tell us what on the way out here, what, the state of your campaign and what's next for you.
My campaign is going amazing. And, as I said, I'm Adam Schoof, running for County Commissioner, Precinct 4, which is south of West Park, east of 99, essentially, in the New Richmond area, half of Old Richmond. But I've served the community for 16 years in law enforcement and the military, and I've served the on the board of trustees where I've saved buku's amount of money, and I want to do that on the county commissioner's court. So remember, you live in precinct 4, vote for Adam Schoof.
Great. Thank you both for being here. Next week we will cover the state of finances for the county. Again, Fort Bend County, we're going to cover the debt. We're going to cover the taxes, all of that stuff. We have Kenneth Amori, candidate for county judge, coming on, and John Plissett, candidate for JP Court. This is Chris Heasley with the Chris Heasley Radio Show. We will see you back here next week. Have a great week.